Okay, this is the third time I've tried to do this video, and hopefully, let me turn this down. Hopefully, everything will work out this time. Um, I've actually had my first in my blooper folder. I just had a blooper, and I can't share with you my students. But let's suffice it to say, I got hit by something. My bow flew up and hit me in the face. So, and I didn't react very well. Okay, so this is the video for the Divertimento in D by Mozart, the second page of the second violin part, which is legendary. So, and everybody in the quartet at my studio is going to have to learn it. Aaron, Vicky, Leanne, and Ariana, they're all violinists, so they all need to be able to play this part when they turn the page at a wedding reception and see this. I don't want them to go, oh no. So anyway, so we're looking at starting in measure 52. And by the way, my part has a wrong note in it. The first couple of times I was doing this video, I kept stumbling on this note. My part has a wrong note in it. In measure 53, the very first note, if you have a D natural, that is incorrect. It should be an E natural. All right, that's very important you fix that. So measure 53, first note's an E natural. It's also very important, we're always fussing at our students about not using their fourth finger. And it's a matter of logic whether or not you use your fourth finger. You don't want to use your fourth finger when you're going to vibrato, a long note when you're going to vibrato. You're going to put any other finger on that note besides fourth finger. And you try to avoid open strings when you're holding long notes because they sound kind of bare or something. They don't sound right. So we try to use a fourth finger to avoid string changes, and we also use but we try to avoid it when we're holding long notes. So anyway, there are a couple of times in this passage between measure 53 and where it ends in measure 61. There are several times you must use fourth finger, and I'm going to tell you those times now. Okay, in measure 52, the very first note is fourth finger. You start this on fourth finger. 4, 3, open 1. So the first note in measure 52 is fourth finger. Then in the next measure, which is measure 53, the last note in the third beat, that A is fourth finger. Then you use fourth finger again in measure 56, the first note in the first beat, which is an A. And then the first note in the third beat, which is also an A. You're going to use fourth finger. And then you're fine and dandy until you get to measure 59. The first note in the last beat, which is an A natural, you're going to use fourth finger. And then in measure 60, the first note in the fourth beat, you're going to use fourth finger. And I'll go back through those again and make sure you have those. But those times you really have to use fourth finger because you're going to be going too fast here to be doing string changes, and you can't go fast when you do the string changes, okay? The other thing, in my edition, it says that you do the entire measure with one bow. I would divide that measure up into at least 2 bows, okay? I think 4 is a little obsessive or a little bit too much, but I think that excessive, that's the word. But I think 1 bow is just, they want you to keep it quiet. That's why. Believe it or not, even though this is like, you're doing death-defying leaps into the air with this, your part is not important, okay? You're noodling around underneath. So it's a noodle, but you want to noodle the right notes if at all possible. So the way I'd start this is I'd play the notes separately, and I'd play them with small bows, but I'd play the notes with separate bows right now because you need to get it in your ear, okay? So we're going to start in measure 52, and we're going to just go all the way through it just to get the fingering, and then I'm going to show you some ways to practice it. So we're going to start with fourth finger. This is measure 52, okay? So it's going to be 4, open, 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 1, start on measure 57, B flat. Open, 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 open. This is 4, 4. Open, open, open. Now this is 4. Now, when you hit this open D here, shift to the 3rd position on the G string and play 1, 2, 3, 2. Just leave your first finger down. Open, then high 3. Right? Okay, so the only position work you have, and I would strongly encourage you to do that, is because this is going to be going about this fast. And it's very hard to go. That's a lot of string changes. So just the secret there, you're going to, when you shift, you need to move your finger, your first finger higher than you would normally move it because it's a C sharp. You're going to this note. But you have time because you have that open D. You're going to shift on an open string. So make sure you have all your 4s in there. You start on a 4 and measure 52. You have 4th finger on the last note of the 3rd beat in measure 53. That's an A. Then you have 4th finger again in measure 56 on the first note of the 1st beat and the first note of the 3rd beat. Then you have 4th finger in the first note of the last beat in measure 59. Then you have in measure 60 the first note of the last beat, which is also an A. And then you're going to go into 3rd position for that next measure. All right. So little tricky spots. In measure 53, there's a fingering. Okay, notice that. I told you there's a wrong note there. Well, there is in my part. The first note of measure 53, excuse me. The first note of 53 is an E natural, not a D. Because to play the D, you'd have to repeat a note. In other words, you'd go, you'd be going, and that's very awkward. It's an E natural. Okay, so the first note in the first beat of measure 53 is an E natural. Make sure your part's not wrong because mine is. And this is supposed to be this is probably an Urtext edition because it didn't have any bowings in it. All right, so someone misread it as an E, a D, and put it in as a D. So if you notice, the first beat of measure 53 is an E natural to a B flat. And if you notice, you have to move that first finger back for the B flat. Well, and that's going to be slurred. Because I would do 2 bows per measure. The first and second beat on one bow, a down bow, and the 3rd and 4th beat on up bow. And to me, it's very awkward to go 1, 1, especially when you have to move it back. So I would suggest a fast fingering, and you're not going to like this at first because this is something you haven't done a lot. I would play 2, 1. I'd play the E natural with, I'm going to put this in my part too. I'd play the E natural with a second finger, right? And play the B flat with 1. And then leave your first finger down because you're going to be going back to it. The first note on the first beat of the second measure is the B flat again. So leave your finger down. So what I would do there, and this is just going to be slow practice, and it's going to be worth it because trust me, I've probably played this piece 100 times in my lifetime. It's more than once a year. So I would play, put your first finger low and just, one is going to be on the A string and play, watch. So your 2 is low. It's going to be a low 2 because you're hitting the E natural, then B flat, D, and then C. So your 2 is doing some traveling, but that's not difficult at all. Okay, so I would do that fingering there. There's one other little awkward place, and I don't remember where it was. But okay, so the next thing I do to practice this, I would probably excerpt those places we've just talked about. It's that place where you go 2-1, right? I'd probably play the notes before that. So you're going to play F, E, F, D, then move your hand back and play 2, 1. So F, E, F, move it back, 2, 1, 3, 2. And maybe try them with separate bows. F natural, E, F, D, move the 2 back so you can play E, B flat. Okay, just practice that slowly. And this is how every professional violinist would practice this. All right? And then maybe try slurring it down, up, down. All right. And you may, sometimes I know I'm really, I always talk about trying to leave you with very important practicing concepts. And what I notice about students nowadays, especially Suzuki students, we teach them all these wonderful pieces of music, but we don't teach them how to practice. And that is what education and teaching is, as far as I'm concerned, is teaching you to teach yourself. And if you play a string instrument, you will be teaching yourself until the day they put you in the ground, because that's what you do on the violin. The violin is like a puzzle. It's like it's teaching you to solve problems, and gives you puzzles and challenges all the time. This is a puzzle. This is a challenge. Now, I've already worked this puzzle. I'm like the spoiler, okay? Because nobody was there to give me a spoiler. I had to learn this the hard way, okay? So I'm giving you all the spoilers. I'm giving you all the ways to get through this and have a good time with it. But you do have to practice these little places, and the best way is to excerpt the problem, which we just did. We did the notes themselves, then we went and did the notes in front of it, getting into the problem and getting out of the problem, okay? That's what it's all about. So what I would do next in my practice, I would practice 4 notes at a time, and we've talked about this, right? So I'd go, in fact, right now, don't worry about the bowing, because we're going to want to go. Right? We're going to want to do, I wasn't looking at my music. We're going to want to do at least no more than 2 bows a measure, right? We like to do it in 1, but right now I think 2 is what we should do. Okay, so I would start by doing 4, and I just do a slur 4. What I would do. Notice that last measure 61. Notice that the last group of 4 is slightly different than the first 3 beats. You're going 1 2 3 2 1 2 3 2 1 2 3 2 1 2 3 1. And that's mark your music. I'm giving you. I want you to run this stuff off when I send you a PDF file of this, and I want you to mark this music And you need to have a file where you keep stuff like this, so that if you find out, like maybe you're playing it somewhere, sometimes this is done by string orchestra, not just by quartet. So if you find out maybe the orchestra you're doing is playing this piece and you're on second violin, go through your file, find it, and practice from your music, so that when you show up at rehearsal, everybody's going to go, whoa, you know, she's got a head start on us, right? So you want to keep things like this and the Messiah, stuff like that. You want to keep copies of it with your fingerings and your bowings, so that you can get through it. You know, you can survive it. You know the answer. You know the spoilers to how to survive it. So I was going very fast at that when I demonstrated what I just did. But that, what we just did, doing 4 at a time, right? I would take maybe, what you're doing is you're stopping between each group of 4 so that you can set your finger, right? 2, 2. As soon as 2, D, 2, 1, no, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, you're setting the finger for that next group of 4. So right now I'm doing it fast because I don't want to take this video to take forever to upload. So wait. You can do like 2 beats of wait. 2 and open and 2 and second finger, first finger, like that. Because you really, that's where you get to think. And you need to think in groups of 4, but you've got to get that first finger down so that it triggers the next group of 4. Then after you feel good about that, try doing 8 notes, like wait, second finger, well, first finger and, then first finger, third, second finger and, second finger and. In other words, then you do 8 notes. Only when you're comfortable doing that. And if you start making mistakes, go back to 4. Now, this may seem like a very slow way to practice. This is how professionals practice. They have like lots of fast notes. They organize them so they're because you're training this muscle. This is not about muscle memory. I really have a problem calling practicing teaching your muscles. You're not teaching your muscles. We've been through that. We know how to move our muscles. We know how to move our fingers. But we've got to get the sequence of notes up here. This is about your brain. This is about your brain remembering things. And trust me, once you learn this passage, I didn't practice this before I sat down to play it for you for this video, because I have been there, done that with this. All those little sequences are up here, right? Because I've played this before, right? I'm not learning it again. I don't have to learn it again. And I'm telling you, this kind of practice, this is how you do it. And this is the hardest thing, I think, to convince students or to teach them to do, is to practice correctly. My first teacher did not teach me to practice correctly. And that made a lot of difference in my career. If I had been taught from the beginning, when I'm teaching you about practicing, I'd be a different player. I'd be totally different. I would have enjoyed my violin so much more, because I wouldn't have had those moments of sheer terror when I had to prepare a piece of music and didn't know how. I had to teach myself to practice. Rodney Schmidt at East Carolina University, he tried. He gave me a lot of practice techniques, and so did Paul Topper. But I had been playing 10, 12 years before I met these men, and I'd already learned things wrong, and it took me a while to change. And then as I've gotten older, I've learned a lot of more practice techniques. So I'm passing these on to you. I'm passing on this great knowledge that these 2 wonderful teachers tried to teach me, or tried to undo the damaged teaching. And then I'm also passing on to you stuff I learned. But you have to apply this, and you've got to trust me. This is the way it's done. And if you practice for half an hour, and all you practice are those 8 notes we were working on with that finger. If you practice for a half hour just on that, practice. Second finger. Practice it over and over until it becomes, it's a trick. I was thinking today about, because I like to compose, because I was thinking the other day when I was putting so many finger numbers in my edits, I thought, I should make a book of these little finger things that you find in repertoire, and I should call them, they should be exercises. I'll make them into exercises, and I'll call it finger NUMB-ers, numb, like your fingers go numb, practicing, right? Finger numbers. Then I thought, what was it we call it? Remember, I told you these little fancy things that we practice. We call them licks, like L-I-C-K-S. They're called licks. Let me hear that lick. How do you play that lick? Well, the way we play the licks many times is with a trick. And I thought, lick tricks, I think they're really cool too, because we have little tricks that get us through passages. And sometimes you'll work on a passage forever, and then after you've worked so hard and you think you got it down, then somebody will tell you, oh, you know the trick to doing that, right? And you'll go, there's a trick? And then you find out what the trick is. And you go, oh, it's so easy. I didn't realize it was that easy. I was playing it the hard way. And right now, this little trick of using 2-1, that's a little trick. Most people wouldn't even think of doing that. They think of moving that first finger, right? And that's, you hear people when they do that, it's like, oh, come on, folks. It's so much easier if you use 2-1. And right now, that's not going to feel comfortable, but practice it. And as you practice it on this piece, you'll find other places where you're trying to, and you go, wait a minute, I had the power all along. I used 2-1. Just like that. It reminds me of that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where Indiana Jones, he's so tired, and the guy comes at him with the sword, and he just pulls out his 6-shooter and boom, gets rid of the guy. Sometimes the answer to a difficult situation is a very simple answer. And this is a simple answer. Okay, so I would get with a metronome. Once you can get all the way through it, I'd even start using the metronome now, like maybe 60. Wait, 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 wait. Second finger and. I do it with a slow metronome. One, maybe that's 60. Da 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 da. Wait, wait. Da 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 da. Wait, wait. That's how I practice it, because it's going to end up going. Depending on your depending on what tempo you've established by the time you get there. And you always try to tell your friends, because nobody else has this except the second violin part. So when you're playing this piece, if you're playing second violin, you might, when you get to the double bar in the middle of the piece there at measure 36, you might say, okay, folks, let's kind of pull the tempo back a little bit there, because you know that when I get to measure 52, I've got something really challenging. Just whisper it. Just remember, I got measure 52. Okay, just keep it. Just remind people, because sometimes they forget, because they're playing quarter notes, eighth notes, half notes. They have no idea, because they forget. You forget, just like you forgot until you turn the page and went, oh, don't play second violin on this. Okay, so just little suggestions, but please practice this. This, just like the Messiah, just like some of the other things we've been playing lately, I tell you, you're going to play them again and again. You will. All right? Okey-doke. My computer went to sleep. All right, practice.